Thank you so much. It is so shameful that the first bill of the new Congress will put a target on the back of millions of our neighbors that work so hard, that build up our communities. It is also going to increase militarization of our neighborhoods. As somebody that grew up in Southwest Detroit, where you'll find 20 different ethnicities, people from all over the world came together, and you should see how beautifully diverse it is, but how they built up communities and neighborhoods. They're an integral part of our neighborhood. And one of the things that I have been seeing over and over again on social media already, Mr. Chair, is literally militarization of Border Patrol, officials everywhere, just people scared and petrified because that's what's exactly happening, because this promotes racial profiling. The bill blatantly violates due process. I mean, these are literally being allegations and charges, not actual convictions. Y'all act like if somebody's undocumented, they can't be deported. They can. As a former immigration attorney, I know that for a fact. You're making this up so you can literally allow people to be profiled and discriminated against. Blame them for the cost of eggs? Is that what we're doing here? We're blaming them because you guys can't get corporate greed on a side that is a disease that is killing our economy? People can't afford housing? You think it's because of our immigrant neighbors? No. If you cared truly about fixing our immigration system, you'd go fix it so that U.S. citizens married to undocumented spouses can actually adjust their status, where we have mixed statuses because for 30 years we've ignored and vilified immigrants. Enough is enough. It will separate families. It would lead again to continued discrimination. It's shameful that my colleagues are giving into racist fear-mongering at the first opportunity to pass legislation to scapegoat our immigrant neighbors and fuel hate in our communities. I know what's going to happen. It won't just be undocumented. It'll be people like my mother who will get stopped and profiled. She have to carry her U.S. passport around? Are we asking people now to have documentation? That's what you want to turn our neighborhoods into, is militarization?
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I just ask all of you to truly understand what this will do to our communities. I urge our colleagues to please vote no on this divisive bill. And it's so important to understand what you're going to turn our communities and our neighborhoods into. We can't allow that to continue to happen. With that, I yield.
From Michigan, Ms. Tlaib is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for having this important hearing. You know, Ms. Bailey, when you think 50% of HUD employees being illegally fired, many of them illegally fired, I don't think people understand the drastic impact it will have on all the housing crisis that we have. I think the private sector doesn't realize what is going to come down the pipes. I think getting rid of, again, this sort of oversight is also very detrimental. But I looked at the numbers. I said, what does 50% really mean? I saw it goes from 1,529 federal workers in HUD down to 765 people. Even the Office of Public and Indian Housing facilitates, get this, 3.5 million rental assistants. Mr. Chair, that means 3.5 million residents who count on those federal workers for that rental assistance program will be wiped out. And it's going to disrupt services to them and disrupt, again, this effort to try to combat the housing crisis. But when I even look deeper into it, I look at the HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, and I was like, okay, so they're going to cut them from, that's 572 workers there, down to 134 workers. That's a 77% reduction. I want you to tell Ms. Bailey, my colleagues and the American people, is housing discrimination still happening?
Thank you for the question. Every year, there are over 4 million instances of housing discrimination. And most instances of housing discrimination are not reported for fear of retaliation. And every year, we have been doing a Fair Housing Trends report, and we see complaints of housing discrimination go up, and we are at record highs, with complaints based on discrimination for disability being the leading and majority of the complaints brought. And I want to highlight one of the victims that the National Fair Housing Alliance recently assisted. She was an older American, And she was facing challenges with creating repairs to her home because, as we all know, insurance costs are rising. And she was unable to pay her insurance. And she was about to lose her home and be foreclosed upon. And what we were able to do as a FIP grantee was to assist her in getting the proper repairs done and make sure there was no fraud and abuse like we saw during the Great Recession, where so many older Americans lost their homes because they were doing things like getting repairs on their home and didn't realize they were signing away a lifetime of equity. And we were able to help her get those repairs and maintain her insurance so that we did not have an older American lose her home. That's the travesty of the Great Depression, the Great Recession of 2008. We saw so many homeowners in cities like Atlanta who were house rich but cash poor be the targets of dangerous and risky, abusive, predatory lenders who would go to their churches, who would go to their community centers as trusted resources and meet with them and convince them to take on projects to improve their property so that they could retire with the dignity that they deserve. They were hoodwinked, and all of their home equity was taken away. And that's why we have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau today, an organization, an agency with a sole mission of
I always
consumer
tell people it's the
protection.
911 for fraud. That's where my residents call. I call CFPB. I don't care if it's mortgage fraud or targeting them, and they get it over and over again. I can't believe they just got rid of this agency that pushes back against corporate greed and the scams that target I saw them do it to veterans, student loan borrowers, and everyone. But I want to get to a really important question. You know, one of the troubling reports that came out that Elon Musk and Doge, there's so lack of transparency. I don't know why we don't have him at this committee hearing. I have so many questions to ask him on behalf of my residents. But they gained access to thousands of people's sensitive personal information. And Ms. Bailey, you know this, and I want my colleagues to know this. I mean, you know, HUD enforces civil rights laws and pushes back against abuse, but it also enforces Fair Housing Act and parts of the Violence Against Women's Act. And often the records in HUD is not anonymous. Like, it's just out there for anybody to have access to that work for the federal government or is basically screened to have access to it. And I'm just, you know, I'm thinking of all those records of domestic violence cases and cases on housing discrimination. Can you talk about the safety and privacy issues for so many of our families that did turn to HUD for help?
They won't have protection. So women who are trying to escape abusers, and including families with children who might be facing abuse, they won't have protection.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. With that, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Ms. Tlaib for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Oleshik, what would you say to a family member that, a friend that came up to you super excited to invest in crypto or digital assets? I think we all had that one cousin that called. What would you say to them before they invested?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I think that Americans are skeptical of crypto, and rightly so. Americans have seen the illegal activity and arrests and just dangerous activity. Looking at a CNBC poll, only 8% of Americans have a positive view of crypto. And looking at the Federal Reserve data, only 7% of Americans own crypto and only 1% use it to buy things. So I would encourage them to have some caution and to encourage them to go to a traditional bank where
I
they'll
raised
be
the question
protected.
because there are Detroit residents who have lost thousands of dollars in cryptocurrency in my district. And I actually have one of my Livonia residents right outside of the city recently contacted our office where she had lost $400,000 through a cryptocurrency scam. And it was just heartbreaking. And I just feel like we cannot ignore that. Today's hearing, of course, is supposed to be about debanking faced by crypto industry. But if we really were concerned about financial inclusion, we know that many of the most vulnerable among us, Black, brown, low income, lack access to basic financial services. And I know across the country, we have charities, individuals, and businesses have experienced trouble opening a bank, maintaining their account, sending or receiving payments because of religious or ethnic national affiliations. And I say this because as one of the only few Muslim Americans serving in Congress, I was surprised to see that one of the poll found one of these polls found that more than 1 out of 4 Muslim Americans reported challenges while banking. And someone said in my district once, it's called banking while Muslim, right? And Ms. Tlaib, how can lawmakers be able to combat such discriminatory debanking practices?
So I think I would answer with 2 things. First, to strengthen oversight and increase accountability to ensure that banks are following the appropriate laws and regulations, that anti-discrimination laws that protect all Americans. And secondly, under the former CFPB chair, director, I think some good work was being done to explore alternative methodologies for people without credit to build credit.
Yeah, I think this is more because they're Muslim. So now I'd like to discuss facts motivating today's hearing and Coinbase's and its consultants' complaint against the FDIC. The claim, they quote, probably familiar with this, starting in 2022, federal financial regulators have taken a concerted steps designed to cripple the digital asset industry. But what's interesting about this timeline, and maybe Ranking Member, you'd find this interesting, what actually happened around 2022? Folks are forgetting, I mean, they were gonna play dumb, but we know what happened. Investors lost $2 trillion during what we call crypto winter, and a whole host of crypto and digital asset companies went belly up, including FTX and Celsius. In early 2023, we saw Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate failed, with crypto playing a huge role in that. So how would you characterize the crypto industry's access to banking services before crypto company and regional banking failures around 2022?
So I think that there was caution and the regulators recognizing the risk that these companies—
They messed up, right? It messed up. They failed. I mean, this $2 trillion.
True.
Yeah, but they act like, poof, we were just like picking on them.
True. So
we were picking on them. They messed up.
So the regulators, the banking regulators recognizing the risk that these companies presented, and then we saw what happened in 2023.
Well, really quick, I mean, I know according to the FDIC's Inspector General reported in early 2023 that 136 FDIC-insured banks have ongoing or planned digital asset activities. So it sounds like crypto industry was doing okay in terms of access. Then the industry tanked. Banks got spooked. Regulators took a closer look. So would you agree with this rough timeline and description? Because I think it's important for the American people to understand this as we sit here. What happened before all of a sudden you guys all got the knock on the door? Something was happening. And so I think it's really important. So again, its regulators got tougher after multiple bankruptcies and related bank failures. That's a fact, and it's part of the, again, I think the facts that nobody's gonna bring up. You know, you fail, you're hurting American people. We're gonna have oversight, and we're gonna make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields. Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia is now recognized for 5 minutes for his questions.
No more wars. The majority of Americans do not support our country getting into another endless war. President Trump violated the United States Constitution by sending United States troops to bomb Iran without congressional authorization. Taking our country to war requires a vote in Congress. Every single one of us represent close to 800,000 people, and they deserve a vote. The American people do not, again, want another war. They do not want us spending endless amount of money to invest in death and destruction. They want us to fund Medicaid, housing, Head Start, having access to clean water, and so many critical programs that our communities desperately need. We have seen our government manufacture consent for the invasion of Iraq that killed and displaced millions of people, our loved ones, and created total devastation and instability in the region. We have seen our government lie about weapons of mass destruction before. We're not going to fall for it again. Instead of listening to the American people who are saying no more wars, Trump is listening to genocidal maniac war criminal Netanyahu, who lied about Iraq
The gentlewoman,
and now
time
is
has
lying
expired.
about Iran. That I yield.
For what?
Has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Chair Powell, last month there was research published in the Journal of Urban Health that found that more than half of Black women of reproductive age, that's the term they use, in the counties that I represent, that had experienced some sort of eviction during their lifetime. So that's like 50% of Black women in the two largest county, Wayne County and Oakland County in Michigan. And these numbers are horrific. As you know, were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
And you know, evictions are often very traumatic experience, but also it creates a cycle of poverty, but also this instability for many families. But especially when it comes to a lot of our Black neighbors, the access to equity, the access to housing is diminished even more. In Michigan, we lost more Black home ownership than any other state in the country during the last recession. So we know the housing crisis, I believe, is structural, and some may say it's a policy choice. While there are many factors at play, and you know this, Chairman, high mortgage rates, the finance rates and so forth, that drag the supply of new housing. But last month, new housing hit a 5-year low. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not sure exactly what statistic you are referring to.
Okay, I don't know. There was all this articles about the housing market and the impact of tariffs and so forth, and they said, again, it hit a 5-year low. And again, I'm getting this from a source. But this sets the market up for higher inflation and more burdensome housing costs to years to come. So Chairman Powell, you know, I'm looking at this monetary whatever policy framework that you guys have put together. Do you think that the way it's structured, and again, I'm trying to understand how you're looking at this in the housing crisis, do you believe it's eroding new rental supply under construction right now, leading to high inflation in future years?
So I think there are two things going on quickly. One is just there's a longer run shortage of housing in the United States, which there's nothing that the Fed can do about. That's not something we can affect.
Well,
there's also, if I may say, in the short run, rates are high, and that's going to weigh on housing activity. But the best thing we can do for the housing market, the absolute best thing, is to restore price stability so that rates come down and so that rates can be at a level that people can afford.
But don't you think that the restrictive monetary policy the framework you all put together undermines long-term price stability right now by reducing the supply?
No, I mean, I think
But
it restores
supply.
price stability. The point of higher rates is to, and
So you don't
it
think
does
the
affect,
higher rates is impacting future supply of housing?
So I think what that does is, I think interest-sensitive sectors like housing are very much directly affected when we cut rates or when we raise rates. That's right. But that's part of the mechanism for restoring general price stability.
So keeping the high interest rates does not impact future supply of housing?
It does not, you know, over the long,
I need to go back to talk to
over the long
women
run,
that the
the
study
Fed will not be, our policy will not be a driver of longer run housing supply in the United
So,
States.
okay, let me ask you, what is the difference? And I'm honestly confused. I want to learn here, and I'm sure people listening to this want to learn. What is the difference between demand-driven rent inflation and supply-driven rent inflation? Like, you guys use these terminologies. What is that? How do I communicate that to the public? What is the difference between supply-driven versus demand-driven rent?
You know, those are not terms that we use particularly often.
What's
but
supply-driven formula?
that would mean that, you know, that there's not enough supply to meet demand. But at the same time, it also means there's more demand than there is supply.
So are you guys ignoring that?
No, but as I said again, our policies will not affect in the long run.
No, I'm being
either
serious,
demand
'cause I
or
see somebody
supply
behind
in
you kind of
housing.
check. I'm being serious, y'all. We're talking about a housing crisis that is getting worse right now because we're not paying attention to future instability that the current rates, and you can raise your eyebrows and all this stuff behind. I don't know. I mean, do you understand? Like, I come from a community right now that I believe is now being impacted by the current framework that you're putting together, that I do feel like it's going to be long-term effects on the housing crisis, and you're ignoring it.
No, we're not, actually. We think the very best thing we can do is to fully restore price stability at the aggregate level. That will be the best thing for homeowners And for home
Even though the
builders and
housing
everybody
supply
else,
has been
in the
impacted by the
long
high
run, that
interest.
is the single
But
thing
Chairman
that
Powell,
Congress
you
has
see where I'm
assigned us
coming
to
from.
do.
But you see where I'm coming from. It is impacting future supply of housing, right?
Not in the long run, no.
Okay. Well,
Gentlewoman's
Mr.
time
Chair,
has
thank you.
expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all so much for being here. You know, I just left a number of advocates, or maybe my colleagues like to call them activists, around the housing crisis. It was powerful speeches about just how terrible and horrific the housing crisis is across our country. And, you know, I'm getting back from there and I'm thinking, well, I'm on Financial Services Committee. Somehow we're going to be able to address the housing crisis. No, that's not what we're doing here. Then I thought, okay, well, you know, the president is shamelessly using his office for vast personal gain. I mean, I think he's doubled his net worth since last year, mainly through cryptocurrency and crypto corruption. And I'm just saying this because I'm like, why are we having this hearing? I always like to kind of dig deeper, and then I found out, oh, well, the anti-ESG, which for my residents listening, it means environmental social governance. These are, many of my colleagues will call activists because they have social causes and they want to make sure their money is not going to something they don't support. And it's because it's funded by big mega donors, the fossil fuel industry. It's true. You all know it. And figures like Leonard Leo and Peter Thiel. I mean, Mr. Copeland, Manhattan Institute, and I would like to submit for the record a fact sheet on the Manhattan Institute from the Center for Justice and Democracy.
Without objection.
Thank you. You know, I think, what, $1.5 million from ExxonMobil and $3 million from the Koch brothers. You know, how do the public take that seriously when I have a community in Wayne County that hasn't met Clean Air Act standards in years, where our kids are literally being poisoned? They can't develop, their brains cannot develop if they're being poisoned. I say this because we're here because of mega donors. We're here to talk about this whole anti-ESG, whatever they want to call, movement. And, you know, this issue to me is fabricated, but the stakes are real in regards to people having disclosure and transparency. The retirement savings of hardworking families are on the line. And so, you know, Mr. Lander, can you discuss, you know, the issues here? I mean, I'm a person that does deeply care about the climate crisis and how the risk to executive compensation and that shareholder proposals can force companies, you know, to disclose that, and why those issues should be in interest for investors.
I mean, I do think it's extraordinary that what's being demonized is the simple effort to disclose the basic risks that a company is facing. And we've heard this a few times today in ways that are so obviously relevant to the shareholders of that company. Of course, there's a broader set of questions that are critical here. But for many companies, their exposure to climate risk is a simple and straightforward issue. Yes, if you have most of your book of financing for fossil fuel financing, an investor might say, I think it would make sense to have more exposure to renewable energy and investment. And you could decide, do I want to keep investing here? Do I not want to keep investing here? And have that basic information. That's what's being demonized, not any requiring of changes, not dictating, not regulating.
I mean, they really want to muzzle people's First Amendment speech. I know you all don't see it that way. Do it all you want. You're getting funded by people. I mean, come on. I'm looking at you all and I'm telling you, these companies are not my constituents. The 12th Congressional District residents are, and if they want more disclosure and transparency, then they deserve it. Then what's the problem? I mean, somebody said that none of these even proposals pass, but you're all here because of Peter Thiel and Leonard Leo. You all know it. That's exactly why we're here, because they donate to my colleagues. This is why we're here. Nobody cares about what's going on with housing. Nobody cares about the fact that I'm literally fighting for Head Start program dollars. That's what people care about. And this is not like a political, this is me, the girl from Southwest Detroit, looking at this, growing up in the back shadow of the only oil petroleum refinery in the state of Michigan, Marathon Oil. And you're telling me that if a teacher and others that are concerned about this, that live in that neighborhood, can't have transparency and disclosures, can't have a say? But see, they call them activists because they politically disagree with them, and it's supposed to be like, most of them were activists before they got here. They were. They might have been activists on issues that I may disagree with them, but I respectfully disagree because I'm like, that's your right to disagree. So, Chairman, I wish we could do more on housing. We could do more on issues of corruption, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Nunn.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Ms. Tlaib from Michigan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's really important. I mean, we're talking about 700,000 people that live here, and I feel like their voice gets completely just dismissed. And so, if I may, Mr. Chair, ask unanimous consent to enter the record the Washington Post poll of D.C. residents found 8 out of 8 in 10 opposed Trump's taking over of their local police and sending in federal troops.
Without objections ordered.
I think it's also really important to understand, like, the incredible kind of slanderous, like, defamation. I don't know what to call it. They're just burying Washington, D.C. You just heard them speak about our nation's capital in that way, in a way that I feel very much like that's not what I see. I see people walking around with their families, people enjoying time to see these beautiful, incredible, beautiful monuments and everything. And there's a pride here, too. And so I just want to bring the D.C. residents into this committee because I feel like they are being made invisible. And this really ugly picture that is not reflective. And I'm from Detroit. I've seen it happen to my city. And it's despicable in a way that I feel like really goes up against our values. One of the things that I know in every abuse of power that, we let President Trump and the administration get away with in D.C., it will be replicated. It will be expanded across the country, and it is going to tear apart our communities. Mr. Jackson, I talked to you about a little bit about this, but I think it's important to understand that we do have a mental health crisis, that we have a housing crisis, affordability crisis. Can you police any of those away?
No.
You can't police away homelessness. And the way they talk about our homeless neighbors is so, no wonder there's violence increasing towards homeless neighbors. I see it already, the brutality of it. When we see housing costs go up, when we see, again, the lack or dismissiveness of the mental health crisis that we continue to grow. And it's not just this administration, and the previous administrations as well. No one has moved with the urgency that is needed. Just last week, the committee approved over a dozen bills regarding Washington, D.C. And, I'm just curious. Criminalized children. My colleague from Boston talked about this. It basically interfered with legislation already passed by the local government. Was anyone on this panel consulted? Any of you? Raise your hand if you were consulted on any of these bills. Yeah.
We were not.
One of the things that, AG, I've been listening to you. One of the bills actually eliminates your position completely. What effect would that have? Completely eliminating your position in regards to be able to do the job that you do to protecting all the families in Washington, D.C.
We'll start with the fact that more than 70% of the residents of the District of Columbia overwhelmingly voted for having an independent elected attorney general.
That's right.
And that's a recognition of the fact that when an attorney general is directly accountable to the people, directly responsive to the people, we are much better at doing our job in terms of addressing housing affordability and conditions in slumlords, seniors and consumers who are being scammed, addressing the issues that are most important to D.C. residents because I am accountable to them.
I read wage theft is an issue, workplace discrimination. There's a number of issues that need to be addressed, and they're not going to address that. They want to paint you all as this ugly, dark, all just out in the street. The way, it's just unbelievable because they all live here. I don't see it. I don't see what they see. I don't understand why we're allowing that to happen because I actually think it's going to hurt our communities. People are going to look at Washington, D.C. folks in a way that I think is going to be very painful, but also, I don't know, Mr. Jackson, I heard the stories. People didn't leave their homes. They weren't leaving their homes. Businesses didn't see people coming into, that's what we want in our nation's capital. stay in your house, don't move, don't go anywhere, stay fearful. It's unbelievable that my colleagues continue again to eject this narrative and this rhetoric in regards to it. But I think it's important, Mr. Chair, just like in DC, home rule was one out of Black freedom struggle in the fight for civil rights, we can't be passive right now. So nobody over there should take anything we say like so personally as if we're attacking them. No, we're attacking a process. We're not attacking people here. And I think it's really important. We need to stand up against this fascist takeover. That's not a bad word. It's a fact. And here in DC and across the country, it is so incredibly important, Mr. Chair, that this committee does not allow rhetoric that defames and or paints Washington, D.C. in a way that you all haven't really truly seen. You're just reading it. No, you're just reading it or something off of some.
Will the gentlelady yield to a question?
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Will the gentlelady
yield? No, I don't yield. I don't even have time. I can tell you.
Your time's expired.
It is expired, but
Tlaib,
Mr. Chair,
nice.
but you all live
like
here,
Mr.
and
Tlaib.
you're not telling people the beautiful parts that you do see in our nation's
Tlaib.
capital. And no, it's just wrong how we're doing it.
Chairman, I think it's
Wrong.
insane that the
But you're gonna
gentlelady
look
doesn't
at
have an
the
argument, but she's going to
Washington,
refer
D.C.
to
as a
me
bunch
and some of
of
my
criminals. You yield to
colleagues.
Mr.
Mr. Chair,
Donald.
We were
you
from the
know
Third
this.
Reich. This is
You're
insane.
gonna look at 14,
It's insane.
15-year-olds as
It's
a bunch
insane.
of criminals?
It's insane.
Oh,
Do I look like a
Please.
member of the Third Reich to you, Miss
Please,
Tlaib?
please,
Is that what I look like to
please.
you?
You're the one taking your voting
Is that what
card,
you think?
giving it
Is that
to
what you
somebody,
think?
committing
Is that
a
what you
crime.
think?
No, that's unethical.
I think it's radical and I think it's insane. And I'll respect everything that you say. But to say something like that to myself and all of my colleagues is way out of line. It's way out of line. It's way out of line.
Regular order, Mr.
Way out of line.
Regular order.
That's okay. But it's okay, right?
That is not how it
It's
goes.
okay, right?
You hold yourself accountable before you talk about
Hold
Washington,
myself
D.C.
accountable.
Mr. Tlaib.
Washington,
Hold
D.C.
your
out
own
of your
self
mouth.
accountable. How
Keep
about
it out of
that?
your mouth.
Hold your own
I'm
self
trying,
accountable.
Mr.
How about that?
Free D.C. and make sure you
All right.
vote with your own voting card. Don't be giving it to somebody
Ms.
else.
Tlaib. All right, time. Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado. Order. Wait a minute, Ms. Boebert. All right.
Michigan, Ms. Tlaib is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairman. You know, we're talking about all of this, and all I keep thinking about is how paralyzed the CFPB is right now. I mean, this is where the 911 for consumer fraud is. I mean, romance fraud is up. I have this huge fraud right now. You got to check this out, Chairman, where they say, oh, you didn't respond to the jury response. Did you hear about this one? To jury duty, and your warrant's out for your arrest, and they get these calls. I had one constituent lose $11,000 on that one. They're getting so sophisticated, because you're right, they even have a website with .org. Like, so, not .gov, but .org, like, so it looks real. It almost looks exactly like, and the number that they call them from is the same county number. All of that to say is CFPB was doing an incredible job, and it's being paralyzed right now. Why? Because it goes after banks that cover up the scams. Let's be honest. Let's be frank here. Everybody keeps thinking about that, but think about it. I don't know why they don't want to like help and aid in regards to this. I mean, to see them in March, you know, CFPB under the current administration dropped a case against digital payment app, what's that, Zelle? A joint venture between Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, delivering a de facto pardon to the company for failing to protect its, you know, users from fraud. We're almost giving them like, hey, well, that's not our fault. We can't, oh, well. I mean, that doesn't make it, there should be a sense of responsibility on the consumer to be protected if these big banks are, you know, again, having their consumers, you know, use their service. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, one of the things, and this is to all the witnesses, if banks fail to fulfill their obligations under the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, some protections in there, requiring them to investigate customer complaints of fraud. If those banks will, you know, willfully ignore hundreds of millions of dollars in consumer losses, would you agree that you know, at that moment they're not going to be held accountable and they're not going to even actually proceed unless we force them to? I feel like people think they're just going to do the right thing, and I'm like, no, CFP made them do it. And so what I continue to see, I don't care if it's the loan services for the student loans, I don't care if it was the folks targeting the veterans, and some of this stuff never gets headlines. It never gets in the headlines. So I would love to hear from all of you. I mean, you saw this case get dropped, and be honest. Be honest. Do you think them dropping that case exposed all of our consumers right now?
So I'll jump in real quick. So the EFTA, one of the brilliant things about that statute is that it actually has a private enforcement.
She's talking about for my residents, Electronic Funds Transfer Act. I just want them to know, when they see that, they don't know that there's protections in there.
Right.
They just think it's something to do with transfer of money.
So it does have private enforcement with really strong remedies if it's violated, including punitive damages and treble damages. However, not everybody can afford a lawyer.
That's right.
And one of the brilliant things about the CFPB is it acted on behalf of all of those who can't
I said that to
afford
people.
a lawyer.
The Elder Law Clinic can't take the case. I'm serious, Chairman. They didn't take the case. They can't do any. I send them to CFPB. And sometimes CFPB just calls or sends the letter and inquiry, gets it fixed like that.
Yeah,
I've seen it happen.
And I also just want to, respond to something that one of the witnesses talked about, which is about private entities that are able to help protect consumers. Now, that is all well and good, and I love that, but there are low-income consumers who can't afford those services, and that's the importance of government agencies.
I mean, what do you all think, other than, Ms. Carla here, what do you all think about them dropping the case? You think that was a great idea? We're talking about $870 million in losses to the public. And this is one of 22 enforcement actions, by the way. Don't be afraid. Was this a good action on behalf of CFPB to drop that case? Paul?
I'm sorry, Congresswoman, I'm not familiar with the case. I can't speak to that.
Okay, how about you, Ian? So it's okay. They're just not going to enforce the Electronic Funds Transfer Act. But go ahead, Ian.
I appreciate the question. I'm also unfamiliar with the case.
Kate, you're familiar. You know that CFPB just dropped the $870 million case against these folks. I mean, Zelle is participating with these banks, and they're letting it happen. And pretty much they're like, sorry, you lost that money. We can't do anything about it.
Thank you for the question. One of the things that we talked about a lot in the task force that we have been organizing is the ability for, in this example of the text messages, for the banks to get information from the telecommunications companies about that interaction.
That's
so
right.
that they know whether that case is fraudulent.
Why don't they just want to do? I don't understand why they don't want to help.
Well, I think the issue we'll come out with in this report is how we can help all of those institutions to better share information so that they can take more preventative action.
Yeah, thank you.
Now recognize Representative Tlaib from Michigan.
Whew, Maxine. Of course, you've been thanked a lot, but I want you to know many family members can't be here. You know the retaliation for anybody to speak up. I don't care if it's National Guard, anywhere in our military. So just know there's a lot of people behind you, and you're here giving them a voice when they're feeling paralyzed and just full of fear. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, and just know there's all these people behind you, like literally just saying, keep it up and talk. I got text messages from folks like that happened to someone, and they're relating. Even someone just texted me that a rural postal worker was racially profiled recently. I mean, that's what our country's turning into. I still can't get out of the image of going to read to elementary school. This was years ago. And I was reading to third graders, and I remember coming in, and you always kind of come in and get those little chairs, and you're sitting there waiting for them to come and get you to take you to class. And I just remember seeing this little girl. Her hair was so just long. I just kept thinking, God, that would be so hard in the mornings to untangle that hair. When she turned, she was crying. And I don't know, there's something, and I had to ask, is everything okay? Is somebody, bullying her? Like, what's going on? She had gone to her home, and her parents were gone. And the neighbors told her that, I don't like picked up. They were kidnapped. They were taken, again, many times I've seen it as an immigration attorney, no warrant, no real authorization. And so, Director Gupta, I want people to understand how broken and inhumane, as we continue to fight in courts, winning some, bringing at least some into attention, the new policy on expedited removal is destroying our due process. Talk a little bit about that. I want the American people to understand they're moving them before we can even get to them as legal representatives. They're moving them so quickly, so fast, that we're not able to at least get before a judge to fight on their behalf.
Yes, thanks so much, Congresswoman. So you're absolutely right that this administration has taken multiple steps now to abrogate and deprive people of the most basic due process. And as a starting matter, we're talking about an immigration system where there's no right to an appointed lawyer, an immigration court system that is not independent. Immigration judges report to the same president as the prosecuting attorney. It is already a system that doles out punitive, destructive consequences like deportation and detention without high levels of due process. So we're already starting from a lower level of due process. And this administration is taking that to an all-time new low. And the reason that they're doing that, including using expedited removal, is because it is, again, back to their efforts of deporting as many people as possible, arresting people to meet their daily goals. Due process is a barrier for them to meet those goals, to meet those targets. Diplomatic barriers, due process,
and
processing.
Director Gupta, when I heard about the staging locations,
Yes.
I don't like that we call them this, because I think when people are listening right now, they don't know what that means. It's literally right before they put them on the plane. They're putting them on concrete flooring. No one knows they got moved. We have no idea. The database, where you go locator or whatever the heck, you know what I'm talking about, Chelsea? That thing was always down. When I was looking for someone, I had a family 12 days. I could not find them because guess what? When Border Patrol they couldn't find any beds. They couldn't find any place to take them. For 12 days, they were at an office building on the floor with 3 kids. And when I found out about it and went there, they were like, sorry, but ICE needs it. And then I said, why couldn't I find our family members? Why couldn't I? Because they are our family members. Why couldn't I find them? Well, Border Patrol, and we got to fix this, Pramila. Border Patrol doesn't have access to that system, right, Director Gupta? So they are kidnapped and disappeared. We have no idea where the hell they are. And so I want to talk, it's so inhumane because there's such a shock and a fear, and you can't find them and you don't know how to get to them. And I just really hope people understand to take a deep dive into that. And Lynch, I want to tell you, in the 80s and 90s, it worked to talk about the economic impact. It did. And it's important. I get it. Of course, we use that because it was about the moral, human, family issue and community issue for us. But they don't care about that anymore. It is about the cruelty. And that's why we have to do a shadow hearing. Chair Jayapal has to do a shadow hearing because they don't want to talk about it on the official side of Congress. But we're going to continue to expose them. And, Pramila knows that. I'm not going to wait 10 years, 11 years, and everybody would be against it. Oh, it was terrible we did that at that time. Well, guess what? It's going to be my kids racially profiled later. You know it. It's going to be our babies if we don't stop it now. Thank you.
Next up for a question is Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Dr. Ellison, can someone stop having cancer? Because we cut them off of health insurance?
No.
Yeah, can they all of a sudden be healthy? Everything's great. You don't need insulin. You don't need all the, I'm being serious. I think my colleagues are acting like that somehow our residents can stop being sick, can stop needing, or they don't have any special needs or disabilities all of a sudden. They're cured. No one plans to get sick, right, Jonah? Nobody plans to get sick. No one.
No.
You plan your child to get sick? Do you plan on getting cancer? I want to read to you guys. It's really devastating that I feel like my residents, it makes me actually want to cry, that they're begging me. The fact that they're begging their own government to care about them as if it's their fault to get sick. This one wants me to know that her and her husband have health issues not related to lifestyle. Why? Because I have colleagues that actually try to blame them for getting sick. She said, my husband is a non-drinker. I drink rare occasion. We both have never been smokers, but we both have cancer. And she goes on to say, my husband's a retired public school administrator. Yeah, we can't do it. She said all the new plans increase cost of copay, medication, co-insurance. She goes on and on. Another one is as a husband, and this is a quote from them, because I like to bring the district here, because there's such a disconnect here of really the pain at home. My husband and I both work for ministries and nonprofits. We spend our time seeking to serve other people and are grateful to have the lifestyle despite the financial challenges. But we have known seasons in the past when high cost of healthcare meant that we were forced to defer treatment for digestive problems, for new glasses, right, Doc? I mean, people get carpal tunnel. They just don't come in because they can't afford it. The plan we have, they said, through the healthcare marketplace, as it stands today, has helped us attend to our medical needs so we can go on serving other people. If the healthcare costs go up, we'll be right back in the zone of being unable to get the care we need, making it harder for us to serve community. And if I may, this is really just heartbreaking. This person said, this year my employer eliminated my position. I had amazing health care. I now rely on a plan at the Affordable Care Act marketplace, which doesn't cover much, but I have something. I'm a senior citizen and going without health care is not something I want to do, but without the subsidy, I have no choice. Mike Johnson needs to get a grim reality check, as it is him and the Republicans that are causing the shutdown. We can't rely on them to deal with it later. Remember that. Again, it's not like somebody can stop being sick. He said we can't rely on them to deal with it later, because it would be nice to know how much our health care is going to be. Maybe he should go to his district and listen to his constituents. I'm sure they're not happy with him either. And I read one after the other, but the one that kind of really breaks my heart is, I rarely get really young people to email me, or, I get the direct messages, sometimes. But this one was heartbreaking. She said, my father is on a fixed income and been permanently disabled his whole life. She said, these funding cuts have put him and our family at risk of losing health care coverage. On top of that, she said, our living expenses have skyrocketed to the point where we have to pick and choose which bills to pay each month. We're always uncertain of whether what we will get will be enough to pay for our food for the next month as well. She says, I'm 18 years old. I'm already working too, but it's not enough to support my family and myself, an 18-year-old having to worry about this. I mean, I don't have much to say, but I wanted to get this on the record. We're having this hearing because they're not creating spaces for us to hear from families in our district. And, Doc, I started with that because I feel like there is this almost blame or acting like somehow our neighbors that get sick are disposable. Right. Let them die. Let them get sick. Who cares? Let their quality of life decay. And I'll tell you over and over again, even where we know some of the cuts to Medicaid will not happen until the next year. We know people are making those decisions now, though, of how to address them. But we had people call my office, crying because they canceled their appointment, thinking it's already in effect. Cancel their appointment. This is going to be devastating because people are going to be like, I can't afford it. And they're going to stay home. And they're rather just going to get sicker, and they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. This is incredibly, again, shameful for many of my colleagues who, on the other side, many of them have access to health care right now, but majority of their families at home, many of them, again, I have about 38% Medicaid recipients. Some of my colleagues on the other side, over 60%. I can't even imagine how their residents must feel. Doc, I know for me, Medicaid, I think of Black maternal health crisis. I think of infant mortality in my community. And when I look at over 40% of births are covered from Medicaid in my state, that's postpartum, that's prenatal. You know this. I just don't think my colleagues get it. It's not like they can stop being pregnant, No, really, at the moment, if they're having birth, it's not like, okay, well, I'm not gonna, it doesn't make any sense to me that, again, we're creating an environment. I know, I'm so sorry. It's just really sad that we continue to have this, and I'm really pleased, and so thank you to my colleagues for allowing this space for me to bring the stories of my constituents here.
Now recognize Representative Rashida Tlaib from the state of Michigan.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. My yamma, who's a Palestinian American, calls Chicago, and I just love it. And you probably heard the beautiful immigrant accents, but I can tell you, Laura, we're all Laura's daughter. That's what I'm going to call you, if that's okay. To Laura's daughter, we have your back. I know it doesn't feel like it, but the majority of American people are very much opposed to what is happening to your mother. And I want you to know, even though so many want to dehumanize her, she sells tamales on the corner, the fact that a warrior is standing before members of Congress right now speaking on behalf of her and so many immigrants across the country, immigrant neighbors, they're just our neighbors. Thank you. Thank you. Tell your mother that I want you to know just that you stood here unapologetically yourself, and your mother should be so proud of you and speaking up. Thank you. You know, you all know, and I love to start in my roots. I am from the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit. And Pastor Black is speaking to me because I know transformative change doesn't come from the White House, nor does it come from members of Congress. Civil Rights Act wasn't an idea from Congress. It was an idea grew from the streets, from community that said enough is enough. You know, the right to organize unions, right, Bob, didn't come because somebody in the White House woke up one day and said, wow, organizing unions might be a good thing to make sure people are not dying at work. It was when people from the outside withheld their labor and they fought back. And so I want to talk about this thing, and I know I'm always say it wrong, it's NIMBY, like not in my backyard. This sense of Chicago is our backyard. The apartment building where the Black Hawk landed is an apartment building across the United States. We should not think, well, it's not happening in our backyard. I think it's important too, and I say this lovingly to my colleagues, we were warned by our immigrant neighbors that were attacked for saying abolish ICE, or attacked for calling out what ICE was doing. They warned us, stop funding them. They're too militarized. They're doing checkpoints in our community. They warned us over and over again. In Southwest Detroit, where I grew up, 20 different ethnicities, home of Mexican Town, they warned us. And we did nothing but continue to fund and allow us, our country, to move away from family reunification into criminalization. So I want to center us on that because I think it's important, because when we get that gavel back, I want us not to forget this moment. You know, Bob, it's so hard for me sometimes, even when people talk about the economics. I know this. You know, I know who's building our country. I know who's at our border like, come on, I need you. It's not the employers, though, that are in detention centers. It's the ones who make the most money off of it. They don't want them coming out of the shadows because they'll join unions. They'll get better pay. They'll get health insurance. You all know this. His billionaire friends profit off of our broken, inhumane immigration system. It's very clear to me. But I want my colleagues to know this. This is literally how they're recruiting. I don't need to go to Southern Law Poverty to see that they're recruiting literally like this. This is on the Homeland Security, their page. This one. Think about how many criminal illegal aliens you could fit in this bad boy. Want to deport illegals with your absolute boys? This one, look at it. Secure the golden age. America needs you. Join ICE now. You guys need to understand. DHS is now being led by figures affiliated with extremist ideology. You know, Stephen Miller. It's already well documented. I ain't making this up. He literally is documented that he's anti-immigrant extremism. He loves, promoting the racist dystopia, the novel The Camp of the Saints. Look it up. That's who's running DHS. I want my colleagues to remember this, because when we get the gavel back, we got to know they're already there. We got to address white supremacy within our agencies that are attacking our immigrant neighbors. I want you all to know, as I end this, and you know, I was going to ask Mr. Fee, because Sean Casten's right. I can't believe I can't find my residence. Literally for days. 12 days at most, one family. She had 3 kids. They had her sleeping in the cot, like on the floor. And I didn't know where she was. I just couldn't find her. And I'm a former immigration lawyer, and I'm like, what is going on here? Enough. When we say disappeared and kidnapped, we're mean disappeared and kidnapped. We can't find them. All of us have experienced it already. So I want ACLU to work with us and other legal agencies. We need to end that. When we get the gavel back, let's fix it so we can know where our loved ones are. And I'll end with this. You know, remember this, again, my city. Detroit is just like Chicago, was a critical stop to the Underground Railroad. When I see businesses in Chicago putting stickers out saying, we've been trained to create safe haven for you, when I see people being trained to deliver groceries and making sure they're not followed, all of that to create, it may not be an Underground Railroad, but we are the ones going to protect us and make us safe, not an agency that recruits like this. And Madam Chair, thank you. We didn't have to be here. I want you all to know, my colleagues, and it's not to give us credit, just know this. We needed to bring this light, and they won't give us a hearing on this. They don't care. Exactly. You know when they're going to care? Bob, you know this, and that's what sickens me. It's not the humanity issue, the moral issue, Pastor. It will be because the billionaires are now starting to see that they're losing money. But I don't want them coming back to work until we have real, just, humane immigration system so they can come out of the shadows, so these folks cannot continue to profit off of this system that continues to do what they're doing to our children and to our immigrant neighbors. It's sickening that Laura's daughter has to be here shedding tears.
Thank you.
All she wanted to do is protect her family and to give them an opportunity. Shame on us. Shame on us for continuing to fund this agency.
We have two more people to get to before.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Tlaib for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor Adams, since we're on this conversation around oversight and some misclaims here about corruption, I mean, do you agree, Mr. Mayor Adams?
Yes, I hear you. I hear you, Congresswoman.
Oh, okay. You weren't looking at me. That's why. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I'll speak louder if you want. Do you agree to a quid pro quo deal to enforce the Trump administration's cruel immigration policy in exchange for protection from the federal corruption charges against you? And you are under oath, just as a reminder.
Congresswoman, there was no agreement. There was no quid pro quo, and I've done nothing wrong.
So help me out here, though. So the Trump official, Tom Homan, we all know who he is. He said, quote, I'm quoting him, if he doesn't come through, I'll be in his office, up his butt, sorry, Chairman, saying where the hell is the agreement we came to, end of quote. You're accusing the Trump administration for lying? Did they lie? What agreement did they're lying then?
Mr. Homeland and I both agree we will fight dangerous criminals, and we've never had any conversation about my case.
Okay. So Mayor Johnson and Johnson and who, I'm sorry, I can't get that.
You can just call it Chicago and Denver.
There you go. This is really important, you know, as a child of immigrants, and I think many of my colleagues on that side of the aisle have beautiful, diverse communities as well. And one of the things that I know happens when we try to have local law enforcement and local city officials, I mean, they even want Treasury, folks that work for our city treasury, asking people for immigration status. That's what they would prefer. You know, is that racial profiling? I mean, what do you do? Like, you wait for somebody to come, they have an accent, maybe they wear hijab, maybe they look a certain way. That's what they want you to do. That's what they're asking you to do, by the way. They want you all to basically do the job of what the federal government should be doing in regards to passing really comprehensive immigration reform, so families are not separated, because right now they're just, all they want to do is continue to talk about enforcement. Guess what? The last 20 years it didn't work, did it? It isn't working. So one by one, if you can talk about that, because I know my mother, who's been here for over 50 years, is carrying her passport, her U.S. passport for the first time in her life, and she ain't traveling nowhere out of the country. But she's carrying it because she knows her beautiful accent, it's beautiful, I love it, and just so fearful of being stopped and being asked her immigration status. She knows she'll be racially profiled, and she already feels unsafe in a community she lived in for over 50 years.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I would just agree. We don't think it's relevant to know someone's status when they come into a public library to check out a book, or if they come to the hospital for service, or if they come to register their child for school. The Constitution says you're entitled to an education. Our job is to provide it. So we think that's unnecessary, and it just scares people away.
Yeah, Mayor.
Yeah, allowing local law enforcement in the city of Chicago to focus on city priorities, as well as making sure that there's trust between our immigrant communities and all of our communities.
I've worked on
that-
domestic violence case as a former immigration attorney.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, this is deadly for women being abused. Deadly.
It certainly engenders trust, and that's how we have driven crime down in the city of Chicago because of that trust.
Mayor.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Boston is proud to be the safest major city in the country, and we do not ask about immigration status when providing city services. We also are clear to all our residents that we do not care about immigration status when we hold people accountable for doing harm in the community as well.
Yeah, because when I hear sanctuary city, I hear anti-racial profiling. I really do. I hear like, okay, we're not here in the business of trying to enforce broken immigration laws that are inhumane, completely immoral right now. That's what I hear. And I, as a former immigration attorney, when I hear the story in Denver, and trust me, ICE is there waiting to pick them up. They sent 6 of them, and they couldn't handle 6 of them couldn't take this guy that they're supposed to pick up. Doesn't make any sense to me because they're there. They're pretending they don't know that as a fact. But one of the things that bothers me about all of this is the executive order of rescinding the sensitive locations. Why this is important. They basically want to do immigration enforcement and racial profiling and immigration enforcement that's race-based because I'm at the Canadian border in Detroit. Do you know the majority of people coming down undocumented is Canadian? But guess what? It's still the brown folks that are overwhelming. ACLU did a study, is overwhelming the ones being targeted, detained, and deported. And so for me, the sensitive location, this is hospitals, schools, you know, this is like funerals. This was all a policy in place to protect us from having our communities over policed and militarized. Can you talk about the impact of that? And I have 22 more seconds because he went over 22 more seconds.
He spoke over him.
That
was not
no, he
true.
didn't. No, I didn't. Chairman, I never spoke over him.
No, not you. The mayor spoke over Brandon.
Oh, well, I didn't. It doesn't matter. He went over 22 seconds.
But go ahead and
I
ask
just
your
want them
question.
to answer the question about the sensitive locations because this is something we all should be scared of because pastors are calling me because they're talking about churches being possibly having ICE agents show up at churches.
I can just say, Congresswoman, our fastest growing church in Denver went from 700 folks in the parishion to 5 after that announcement.
All right. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Chair recognizes.
I yield back.
Gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Can everyone on the panel agree that our government should be promoting residents' economic security, not serving the whims of billionaires? Does everyone here agree to that? If you disagree, raise your hand.
I didn't understand your question, sorry.
Is our government's role and responsibility is promoting our residents' economic security, not serving billionaires? Okay, you're uncomfortable, Mr. Kennedy? Oh, okay. I just want to clear. We're community banks, right?
Just thinking about
we
my
support
answer.
real people. No, we're community banks. I don't know. Maybe you do have a lot of billionaires you serve. I don't know. But this is important because the topic of today's hearing is community banking. But we just can't act like there isn't a crisis going on. Do you know the people calling my office? It's hundreds of people calling my office right now saying what's going on. With access to the Treasury payment system, Elon Musk can simply stop funding any federal government programs like Medicare and Social Security. My residents know that he doesn't care about them. You know, they're not experiments. You know, our people and our communities and our families are not experiments for Elon Musk. And so it's really hard to be in this space to talk about something that I think a lot of people do care about. But at this moment, we're acting like there isn't a crisis going on in our government right now. One thing I do want to talk to you all about, and I think it's really important, is, and this is for any of the witnesses here, do you know which state right now specifically, and to get to community banking, but which state has the most community lenders per capita? Does anybody here know? No? It's North Dakota, which has around 64 banks and credit unions per 100,000 residents. It's pretty great, right? North Dakota has 6 times as many locally owned financial institutions as the national average. Does anybody on the panel know that? Know? Yeah. For any of the witnesses, again, what makes North Dakota so special in its support of community lenders? Can anybody guess? Do you know what makes them special? A large part of the answer is the Bank of North Dakota. The Bank of North Dakota has operated successfully as a public bank for over 100 years. Today, it provides business loans, student loans, home loans, and agricultural loans. I don't know if the chairman and others know this. Public banking is incredibly important to support in our country, especially during this time where we see a lot of folks in the stronghold of, again, the economic security and the future of our families. Did you know that Bank of North Dakota invested $1 billion in legislative directed programs that build schools, water infrastructure, and medical facilities? A public bank did that. In 2023, it returned $140 million to state general fund, and over time it has returned more than $1 billion in funds to the state, money back to the state, to the communities. And I don't even know if my own ranking member, Congresswoman Waters, knows this, but importantly, the Bank of North Dakota doesn't compete with community banks. They don't compete with you all. It partners with you. About half of its $5 billion loan portfolio is lent in partnership with community financial institutions. Participation loans increase the capital available for community development, provide community lenders with greater access to capital. And this is important as somebody that authors the public banking bill. Thanks to the Bank of North Dakota, no banks in the state failed during the 2008 financial crisis. I'm going to repeat this. No bank in North Dakota failed during the 2008 financial crisis. In fact, the bank continued lending while others pulled back, helping the state achieve the lowest foreclosure. As somebody that literally lives in the county, one of the worst foreclosures in the country in Wayne County, Michigan. But it helped achieve the lowest foreclosure and credit card default rates, again, the lowest. My Public Banking Act would actually help states establish similar, robust community banking sectors, which would be partners to all of you. And if we're serious about assisting community banks, we should look to long-standing and proven track record of Bank of North Dakota. This is so important for many of my colleagues. Many are not here right now. Hope they're dealing with the crisis that's happening. However, it is important to understand the role of public banking. It is not something of the boogie thing. It's actually a great way to, again, protect the economic security and future of our families that, again, feel like we don't have their back. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield.